In one of the fine old homes of England, the tapestry lining the withdrawing room represents a scene which must have been very familiar to the ladies whose diligent fingers accomplished this large piece of handiwork. It is a harvest home of more than 400 years ago, and as the light from the huge logs burning on the hearth flickers on the figures, it almost seems as if the brightly decorated horses are drawing on the cart laden with sheaves, as if the girl enthroned on the top of the corn is waving the small sheaf she holds overhead, and as if the harvesters are really dancing around, that in another moment the lad riding the leader must sound his pipe. The harvest is over, and the last neck is being carried home in triumph, held on high by the Queen of the Harvest, until it can be deposited in the center of the supper table in the big farmhouse kitchen. This tapestry hangs in a house in Cornwall, a county in which, from its remote southerly position, many traditions have lingered. Among such traditions, those connected with the harvest are probably some of the most ancient, handed down from generation to generation from the days when the Romans first brought civilization to England and left their stamp on the harvest as well as on the language, laws, numerals and the roads of this county. Until the beginning of the 17th century, Ceres was the name given as a matter of course to the Queen of the Harvest, and in Bedfordshire 2 figures made of straw were formerly carried in the harvest procession, which the labourers called Jack and Jill, but which were supposed to represent Apollo, the sun god, and the beneficent Ceres, to whom the Romans made their offerings before reaping began. The merry Queen of the Harvest, worked in the tapestry, had no doubt been chosen after the usual Cornish fashion. The women reaped in Cornwall, while the men bound, and whoever reaped the last lock of corn was proclaimed queen. As all were ambitious of this honor, the women used to hide away an unreaped lock under a sheaf, and when all the field seemed cut they would run off to their hidden treasures, in hopes of being the lucky last. When a girl's sweetheart came into the field at the end of the day, he would try to take her sickle away to finish her work. If this was allowed, it was a sign that she also consented to the wedding taking place before the next harvest. Over the borders in Devonshire, the custom of crying the neck varied a little. The men did the reaping and the women the binding. As the evening closed in, the oldest man present collected a bunch of the finest ears of corn and, plaiting them together, placed himself in the middle of a circle of reapers and binders. Then he stooped and held it near the ground, while all the men took off their hats and held them also near the ground, and as they rose slowly they sung in a prolonged harmonious tone, a neck, a neck, a neck, until their hats were high over their heads. This was repeated 3 times, after which the words changed to we have N, we have N, we have N. The crying of the neck, as it echoed from field to field, and from hill to hill, on a fine evening, produced a beautiful effect, and might be heard at a great distance. A musical cry of this sort was also common in Norfolk, Suffolk and Gloucestershire, but the words sung were hello, large S. One of the men was chosen lord of the evening and appointed to approach any lookers-on with respect, and ask a largesse, or money, which was afterwards spent in drink. In Herefordshire crying the neck was called crying the maize being a knot of ears of corn tied together, and the reapers stood at some distance, and threw their sickles at it. The man who succeeded in cutting the knot won a prize and was made harvest king for that year. In the same county there was a rough custom of the last load being driven home by the farmer himself at a furious rate, while the labourers chased the wagon with bowls of water which they tried to throw over it. It has been thought that there used to be one universal harvest song used throughout England, but the words and music are not preserved as such. Some curious songs are performed by the labourers, where harvest suppers are kept up. A very popular one has a chorus ending with, and neither kings, lords, nor dukes can do without the husbandman. The majority are drinking songs, and there is reason to fear that the ale and cider that flowed at harvest time, conduced in no small degree towards the unbounded revelry of these old celebrations. But the change was coming. The old women of Cornwall lamented loudly when their sickles were taken away, and the corn was round-hewed by the men with a kind of rounded saw. Nothing about it in the Bible, they said, it was all reaping there. There is little else to say but the obvious. The world is growing grave and old, and it is sad to think of the many simple old-fashioned enjoyments of past years that have faded away.